Hello, this is Lisa Pruitt with U of L Health Peace Hospital. Today I have with me Greg or Oerther or Oerther.
Oerther's fine.
Okay, Greg Oerther. He is a behavioral health outreach coordinator with U of L Health Peace Hospital. And today he will share what the role of a social worker is in court. And I have some questions for you, Greg. Is that okay?
Sounds great.
Can you describe the role of a forensic social worker? How does it differ from other areas of social work practice?
So, the number one thing that forensic social work is about is when you're in dealing with a court system. So, what happens with forensic social work that's a little different is there's a third party involved. So, you're not just talking about the client and their self-determination. Sometimes you're talking about them having to meet some standards set by the court or a third party. So, there's reporting out to those folks that's part of the issue for the families. There's a level of motivation that they may be extremely motivated because they want to get this court situation off their back. There might also be where they're not motivated because they're only doing this because they're told they have to. So there's a lot of different things. So forensic social workers have to kind of navigate those situations with the family. They also have to navigate the legal system, kind of understanding the different players and their different roles. So the public defender, the prosecutor, what are their objectives in these cases? Who represents who? What does the judge, what's their kind of their expectation? And then is this a family court matter? Is this a district court matter? Is it at the court designated workers office? Is it through a jail and you're providing services that way? So kind of knowing what role you play in the system and understanding that comprehensive piece. That's really a big part of what forensic social work is, and just kind of understanding those pieces that come into play with it.
Okay, well, that sounds very complicated. Can you name the roles of different departments within the court system? Like, what should I know walking in, like my first day as a social worker in court?
Sure. So, well, there's kind of different pieces to that. So when you're walking in, one of the things you should understand is, are you talking about juvenile court or are you talking about adult court? And then in your jurisdiction. So for instance, in Kentucky, our juvenile court process is an arraignment for a child. So a case goes to the court designated worker. If it gets called up past the court designated worker's office, there's an arraignment. After the arraignment, there's an adjudication. And after the adjudication, then there's a disposition. And those terms are very different than for adults, where there's an arraignment, but then there is a trial, and then there is a sentencing. So that's a piece of it that's very kind of important to understand. And then you have juvenile court situations, and then you have family court, right? So family court is really about decision makings that aren't necessarily criminal. There can be like civil court matters, there can be criminal court matters, there can be family court matters. There can be specialty courts where somebody's maybe agreeing to receive substance abuse treatment or in lieu of a formal court process. So there's lots of different players involved in the court process. And so understanding where you're fitting in that process is very important. So it has its own system of care. And I think that's important to understand. Those are questions to ask. Make sure you understand where that fits in.
Okay, well, thank you so much. What type of cases do you typically work on, and how do you collaborate with the legal system?
So I'm in my role, I'm the outreach coordinator for Peace Hospital. But in my role, that incorporates I handle the court system for our hospital. So I handle everything from someone getting out of jail who's involved in adult home incarceration. They have an ankle monitor. They're going to be sent to our hospital for an assessment and following up services. This might have been set up by a social worker through the public defender's office as part of a plea agreement. I may work with someone who is a juvenile who has a domestic violence charge against their family, and they're trying to figure out, is this child safe to go home or not? They maybe want to have one of our assessors do an assessment while the child's in detention. One of our doctors make a decision about what level of care this child needs before they get a child back into the family situation, with a recommendation for either hospitalization, in-home services, a day treatment program like Crossroads, like our hospital offers. So there's lots of different ways we interact based on those situations. There's also the whole cabinet for health and family services piece with family court, where there's a lot of interaction where they want to have a child assessed because maybe there's a status offense issue where the child's been missing school. The cabinet's involved because of truancy. And for instance, like a status offense, what does that mean, right? A status offense is a charge that only a juvenile can be charged with. So not going to school, 50 years old, I'm not going to get in trouble for not going to school. But a 16-year-old who doesn't go to school because of their status, there's some court laws that make them have to attend school. So making sure we understand legal jargon when people say things like that, I think that's very important. So, and asking those questions. But there's lots of different ways we interface. And so those are just a few of the different ways that I interface with the court system.
Thank you, Greg. What challenges do you face when communicating with other professionals in the legal field, such as attorneys
So
and judges, and how do you overcome them?
great question. So a big piece of it, I think, kind of is the jargon, right? Understanding what the legal jargon is. When I first started doing social work, I've worn a lot of different social work hats. I've worked as a child protective services investigator. I've provided, in-home services, and you're testifying in court about how the child's doing in family cases to determine if the child's ready to go home. I've done residential treatment work. And then in my role with Peace, where we're providing assessments to a lot of folks throughout the process, understanding the legal jargon, understanding where things stand in the process, and understanding everyone's role. I think it's very important that you understand what's the prosecutor trying to do, how do they see themselves in their role. If there's a victim's advocate, what is their role? If there's a guardian ad litem, what is a guardian ad litem? What is their role in a family court case? If there is a court social worker and you're providing them information, or you're wearing the hat as court social worker, what does that mean? What is your expectation? And it really all starts and stops with understanding your judge and your court, because ultimately we all work for the judge. If I'm providing information, it's to help the judge make a decision. So every report that I write, every piece of information that I report out on, it's really about helping the judge make a decision that is in the family's best interest, in the child's best interest that we're working with. So that's really a big piece of it. And then the communication piece is, responding in a very professional way. We're talking about lawyers and a lot of them, they're very language matters, right? Like they're very precise in their language. That's something that we need to make sure we understand as social workers, that lawyers talk in very precise terms. So making sure that you understand the difference and what you're saying, and doing it in a way that's precise, and making sure that also you're doing check-ins to make sure that what you're saying to them, they understand it exactly what you're saying, so that there's no misunderstandings. The worst thing that can happen is you go in front of a judge and there's a misunderstanding. Well, that's actually not what I meant, Your Honor, even though I'd said this to a prosecutor or to a public defender. And writing things down so that there's not, because people will manipulate your words. A public defender might manipulate what you say in a way to get a better outcome for their client, or a prosecutor may, whether they do that on purpose or whether they do it just accidentally. Making sure that you are present, paying attention, and that you've documented what you're saying, so that you're giving clear information to all parties, especially if you have like a guardian ad litem, public defender, a prosecutor. That way there's no question about what your intent of what you were saying was.
Okay, so understand the lingo, be precise, and communicate, I'm assuming, up to date, whatever's most recent, most up to
Absolutely.
date. Okay.
Absolutely. Yep.
And often use repeat backs. So,
Very much.
so you ensure that everyone's on the same page.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thanks, Greg. What advice would you give to social work students interested in pursuing a career in forensic social work? What skills or experiences are most helpful in this field?
Very good. Very good questions. So the advice I would give you is observe as much court as you possibly can. I would say that's an important piece. Talk to people at various levels of the law enforcement system. Speak to judges. Speak to the court designated workers office. Do a visit with those folks. Meet with the detectives. Talk to them. Find out what's going on. Find out what your jurisdiction does as far as crimes against children. How does that work? You'll be surprised how many different times you'll engage the legal system in the social work field, and you didn't even think that was going to happen. As an investigative social worker with CPS, I did things like controlled phone calls, where they would have the victim call the perpetrator, with it being audio taped, to try to get them to give a confession over the phone. That's something in social work we would never do. But law enforcement will do that, and you might be doing a law enforcement assist, and you're involved in a process like that. So there are what I would say is, ask as many questions, try to learn as much as you can from the different areas of it. And to be successful in this field, you have to kind of have a interest and passion about the legal system. how does the process work? Um, and most importantly, I would say one thing, always tell the truth. Document and tell the truth. And if you don't know something, don't make it up. Make sure that you're just saying what occurred. This is what happened. This was the response, and you document it. And document not just what happened, but when did it happen. That's sometimes timelines are very important in the world of forensic social work. So making sure you document those pieces, where you got the information from, who you got it from, um, and whatnot. So good documentation, good paperwork skills. When I was an investigator for CPS, I would write, like, I would type my notes immediately. I wouldn't wait and try to go back and read my shorthand of what did that mean. Like, I would type my notes the next morning. So the more up to date you can do, those are really some key pieces when you're dealing with cases that are this important.
Great advice, Mr. Oerther. I appreciate you taking the time to share this information with this social work class.
Thank you. Appreciate you.